Hi, Dan.
Hello,
Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you. Dan Laustsen here from Copenhagen.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So, congratulations on the work for Nightmare Alley. I just saw it last night. It's a beautiful
Oh,
film.
thank you. Thanks.
I'd love to start with how you selected the color palette. Like, are you trying to reflect the mood and tone of the film through the visuals?
Yes. This is my fourth movie with Guillermo, and he's, for my money, he's a master. And we have him. He's making those like moon boards from each, not from each scene, but from each, like a carnival is going to be like that. The Copacabana is going to be like, so he has a couple of moon boards, and that's our guideline for everybody, the costume designer, the production designer, makeup and hair and all, and myself as well. So we have this like Guillermo's rough idea about where he wants to go, and that is the guideline about it. And then of course we are talking in the prep, we are talking about color a lot. We're talking the costumes, we're talking about how should the makeup be when we are going to light with this kind of lighting, because as soon as you're changing the lighting, you're changing the color of the makeup, the walls and all that. So we try to be very, very precise from the beginning, because if you're painting a wall like yellow or whatever, we're lighting in the very blue light, it's just going to drift away. So we have a lot of discussions about this color palette with Guillermo and Tamara, the production designer, and we shoot some tests now and then. So it's coming very much from Guillermo where we are going in the beginning. And of course, everybody's trying to help him as much as we can. And that's the same with the color of the light, the atmosphere of the light, because we are not talking about, Guillermo and me are not talking about other movies when we are doing it. We're talking about that movie. We're not like looking into Lawrence of Arabia or whatever. We're just, we're not looking at other movies. We're just talking about how to do this movie. So there's a lot of discussions in color palettes and some tests.
So the film is a visual ode to the films of the 40s, the style of noir, Art Deco, lots of things like that. Can you talk about some of the more noir-esque tropes that you're honoring with your lensing?
Yeah, I have not seen the black and white version. I've seen the trailer for it. Mm-hmm. But again, I want to go into a movie with Guillermo as clean as I can, so we don't want to like, oh, that did that. But we want to split it up. We want to be, the carnival should be a little bit more realistic, a little bit more soft lighting, less black shadows. And when he's coming into Buffalo, where the world is going to be more powerful and falling apart, the light is going to be much more single sources and much more deep black shadows. So that was the idea about, we want to do Cate as much as a movie star as we could, like 40s movie stars, but shot in 2021. Right. And of course, that's a challenge because nobody has done that. You don't do that so much anymore. Everything is like super soft light and, but we did some tests, but that was our idea. We want to go to the carnival to be more realistic and when he's coming into the more powerful and dark part of the world, we want to do that more direct lighting and more black in the shadows. So that was a big discussion we had from the beginning when we got the screenplay.
I want to go back to the carnival sequence because when the carnival is filmed at night, it almost looks like a completely different place than when you see it in the light of day. Of course, the light of day is still very cloudy, but at night it has a different vitality. It has a different light source. It has different, there's smoke and fog around it. It has just a different feel to it. I'm assuming that was completely intentional.
Yeah, for sure. When you're doing a movie with Guillermo, nothing is, oh, by the way, or very, very right. Little is by the way. Everything is planned very, very precise because we have that. We want to have it when you have smoke, like that is like a third dimension to the image, and it's very, very organic. Think about that scene when he's coming into the carnival the first time with all the smoke in the background, smoke and steam. If that was not being there, it was being a totally other. You don't tell something is going to happen, but you just have this like a little bit like worries in the background. So we planned all that smoke, and because we're not crazy about smoke, we prefer steam. So we have steam pipes, the special effects guys have put steam pipes on all the sidewalks and all that kind of stuff. So all that is like planned at advance. And then we like this steel blue color, it's not like blue, but it's just blue greenish for the backlights in the nights. And that's that combination between the steam and the smoke, because we're mixing steam and smoke. And then the color palette between the steel blue and the more warm light from the practicals is giving, I think, a lot of atmosphere. A lot, we don't want to, because we didn't want to do it like too old-fashioned movie. We didn't want to go into sepia, because you could do that very easily, just make everything sepia, so there was no color contrast.
Right.
But we like the color contrast, and we like the contrast in the light as well. So the steam was planned from the beginning. Okay.
There's also, talking about steam and smoke, there's a lot of smoking that happens in the film. Characters smoke quite a bit. Is it a challenge to capture the wisps of smoke stemming from the cigarette with the right amount of light so that it pops the way that it does? It is, and of course, half of that is like, right now, everything, all the small lights around the camera is on LED, so you can dim that up and down if you see it a little bit too little or too much. So, we try to backlight the smoke as much as we can. And the props people are giving the right cigarettes and the right fire things. So it's again a very, very precise preparation, because when she's sitting in the office and with her match, that's very powerful. If you remember that two shot, where she had a match up. And it's just, they have to be the right exposure for that match. Otherwise, it just looks weak, and it's getting too much. It looks like it's a flame. So we all this kind of stuff we are testing in advance. But we try to be as prepared as possible for this kind of stuff, because I think that's paying out really well in the end. So again, going back to the carnival, we are pre-lighting the carnival. We're making tests with the smoke, just see how much it should be and stuff like that. And that's the beauty about working with Guillermo, because he's so well organized and he knows exactly where he wants to go. Getting back to another sort of noir trope, I noticed once the characters go to Buffalo, and this may have happened in the carnival as well, but I know it was more pronounced in the Buffalo sequences. You're lighting, particularly Bradley, you're lighting his eyes quite a bit. Like there's almost like a spotlight that highlights his right here. Talk to me about using that and what it means to the material. Yeah, we did that on Cate and Bradley. We have this, like, we want to do a little bit into 30s noir movies look. So, we made a special tube with the old-fashioned 650 into it. It's not a big, especially old-fashioned, but so we could control the light. It was like a big tube where there was a small light in the end, so we could make it like a kind of a small follow spot, but on the day. And of course, that's difficult because the actors are moving, the camera's moving, but we find a way to do that. It was like, that was the idea we had. We want to have the Buffalo sequence to look much more hard lighting. The light have to hit there. When Cate is standing there with the gun, it's the light is very, very specific on her. Instead of the carnival, it's much more, a little bit more traditional, but still, of course, dark and nice, but softer light in the carnival and much more spotty in Buffalo. Yeah, I actually wanted to jump into the lighting of Cate Blanchett's character's office, because it is so highly stylized, and you've got light sources coming in from the window where it's constantly snowing in her office, and then of course you've got the skylight coming from above. You've got the candles in the room. I mean, the light fixtures in the room. I mean, it's gorgeous, and it looks so fantastic. Talk to me about setting all of that up. We want to have Cate looks outstanding. Mhm.
That was like the goal. She have to look like outstanding. And we didn't want to go into super soft light. You know, you can do that. Go into like normal movie star lighting, soft lighting around the camera. We didn't want to do that. We want to have her powerful and noir. And then we used the same quality of light as I talked about before.
Mhm.
A small light we moved around when she was moving around. It was a kind of a drag to do it, but it was like, when you're working with Guillermo, you know, it's not like hurry up, you know, he wants to do it perfect. So, you know, you
Of
have your
course.
time as a cinematographer. Of course, you're always in a rush. But
Right.
but we have this idea about Cate should look like an old black and white movie, but in color. So
Mhm.
it should, when you see her first time, she's sitting in this backlight in the club.
Right.
You know, if you could took the color out, it would be like a picture from the 30s. But we want to have that feeling, but with color. So we
Mhm.
use the same kind of tricks, old-fashioned lighting, you know, 1K, 2Ks, and not very little LED lights around her. And that was the same with Bradley. We went into the old-fashioned way of lighting actors. And it's not easy. I don't understand how those guys did it in the old days, because you know, it's I don't think it's easy, but when it works, it's fantastic. But
Sure.
that was we have a very clear idea about she should look like a super movie star, and I think she does that in the movie. And that was
Absolutely.
like direct light, but very concentrated direct light.
Yeah.
And that's difficult because the camera moving all the time, so that was limited. But that's a part of Guillermo, you know, and me myself, you know, we like when the camera's moving.
So my last question for you, sir, is about the set piece that happens at the end of the film, and I don't want to give anything away, but you're filming outside in a snowstorm, or it's snowing in a garden. You've got, you know, soft lighting from night lights or lamps that are around, and there's very critical key action sequences that happen in that moment. Talk
Yeah,
to me about the challenges of filming that sequence.
that was a big challenge. First of all, it was freezing cold. You
I
know,
bet.
it was freezing cold. And we actually, again, we have this idea about that person should looks like a fairy tale, like a ghost, like
Mhm, mhm,
a queen. And you know, we didn't want to have any shadows on her.
mhm.
When she's standing there, we want to have it like she should be lit without no shadows.
Right.
So what we have to do there, we have to bring a big cherry picker in and bring a movie follow spot up and just light him with that. And you know, when you, it's again, we have to talk about it. Guillermo and me, we talked about how can we do this. He has a very clear idea about how she should look like, no shadow. She should be like a kind of a dream, a kind of a ghost.
Mhm.
So we did that. You know, it was a big follow spot, moving head hanging on a big crane above the camera, and you know, doing that on the park somewhere, it was like holy motion. Sorry, but that was like it is snowing. You know, you don't want, because we didn't want to have that light spinning over the set. So it was like, you know, the rock and roll moving head
Mhm.
on a big crane, and it works. I think it works fantastic. But it was like, again, you have to figure out how to do it. You have to figure out how it should look, and standing there in -20. You know, it works amazing. But it was like one of the coldest days of the shoot when we did that, and the poor actors have to stand there in more or less no clothes on. It was like, but it was fun to do it, and
Yeah.
it looks pretty cool.
Well, it's absolutely gorgeous. So thank you so much for the time. I think that's all
Thank
the
you
time
very
that we
much.
have. So
Yeah,
congratulations on the brilliant work, and
thank you
best
very
of luck
much.
to you in the season ahead.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Cam.
Hey man, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Nice to meet you. Yeah,
Excellent.
good.
Good to meet you too. So you have worked on Guillermo's projects, several of his projects for the past couple of years. Tell me what keeps you coming back to working with him.
The money.
I love that answer.
It's the bounty of creative riches. It's just really, you know him, I assume.
Mhm.
He's just one of the most generous, creative, intelligent people I know, and he loves to tell a good fart joke. So he's just wonderful to be around. And of course, the work and the material itself is it's a dream come true.
Excellent. So when you look at Nightmare Alley, obviously the original film has a lot of history steeped in film noir. This film necessarily isn't film noir. The set design, the decor all reminds you of noir. I assume you approach this cutting it like a modern film, not necessarily with sort of older film rhythms and pacing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, most of that's just dictated by the material and the footage that comes out. And I'm not coming at it with any preconception or trying to, put it in a corner or the noir box. Tonally, it was a bit of a challenge. I think early on, there was moments where you kind of want to lean into some performance possibilities. But it was something where we were working out the kinks as we were shooting. And by kinks, I mean, we were all discovering sort of what it was to kind of reevaluate and reinterpret A, the source material, and B, sort of how noirish we're gonna lean. So yeah.
So when he started sitting down, I know he had like a lookbook of like representation of how he wanted the film to look and the kind of, the approach that he wanted to take or some kind of style. Did he sit down with you and say, these are the beats I want to hit? Or is that just something you worked out in the editing room as the dailies came in?
Yeah, it's always sort of in the moment. I mean, the thing with Guillermo is that I admire so much is he really puts in the work. So we're really unturning every stone at any possible moment. So we're working the day after on the footage from the day before. We're fine tuning that, even though it might, we might decide that early on that's not going to stay in the film, but we're still going to treat it like it's something that might. Anything's a possibility. But in terms of early on sort of chat, no, you just react. I'm kind of, at least in my position, I feel like the best thing I can do is react and have the audience sort of kind of on my shoulder and let that kind of be the voice. And ultimately, I'm looking at things so objectively that I don't, I'm not taking into account that crane shot took half a day to set up. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And that's the great thing with Guillermo is he's almost the first one to actually say, like, dump it. It's gone. So it gives you great confidence as an editor to work with someone who is definitely very aware of the material, but not precious.
Right. So when you look at I'm not going to say there's two halves to the film, but there's the Carney section that kind of sets up the story that continues through the other film in the buffalo sequences. And, as I've talked to other people, there's definitely a different stylistic approaches that are taken in the Carney section versus, that sort of our direct dichotomy of what appears in the buffalo section. Are the editing rhythms different between those sequences?
Not at all. I mean,
okay.
At one point, I don't know if it was a coincidence. It most likely was because it's too far-fetched, but we literally landed on an equal timing of Carnival and Buffalo, which quickly, disappeared. But that balance of, the pacing and the cutting didn't change. That's all just dictated by the internal rhythms of the performances, the camera movements, just Guillermo's, tone and sensibility. But we didn't ramp or slow things down or try to ease our way. It was just what was right for the story.
Yeah. The flashback sequences that give you gradual pieces of information about Bradley Cooper's character, which obviously I won't spoil. Were those scripted in that way, or did you and Guillermo kind of figure out, hey, it makes sense to put that here thematically? Or
it was definitely something that we had some material that was more impressionistic. We had material flashbacks that was more narrative driven, and we quickly, playing with the footage, realized that it had to lean into more of like a visual sort of motif and atmospheric sort of language. We couldn't draw back in time and have a scene, which we did have one that we had to let go. But the placement thereof of those pieces were constantly coming and going and moving. And it was definitely one of the last things that we sort of put together in the puzzle.
Love how, and I assume that these scenes are played in reverse, where the fire looks like it's almost starting up and then continuing down. You know, it's a little Twin Peaksy that way. I expected like a red room to appear, or something like that.
Oh yeah, I was definitely thinking Lynch and you know, that vibe for sure. Because of the style, it had to sort of sit with the rest of the film and not feel like something different. But we wanted to escalate that story and kind of have it pay off at the end. So that was definitely something crafted in post.
Nice. Some of my favorite sequences of the film take place in the analysis, the analysis scenes between Cate Blanchett and Bradley Cooper. Those scenes feel longer, slower, maybe a couple of longer takes. The pacing feels more sensual, seductive. Are those choices that you guys worked out together?
Yeah, you know, that was shot pretty early, if I recall correctly. And there was something about holding on shots and sort of, I mean, the bigger thing is trying to gain the interior psychology and developing that as much as possible. So that scene where she cracks him open was definitely something that instinctively, just watching the scene and the way it was shot and covered, you just wanted to have that exchange of control, and that's sort of that moment where the relationship pivots. It does crack a bit before the first time they meet, but that definitely obviously is the moment where there is something awry.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
But it's so beautiful. I love those, especially just their eyes and the way they're looking and the cadence of the speech and how it just starts to really slow down. And Lilith and Cate Blanchett and Bradley are just so spectacular in that scene.
They really are. Are those your favorite sequences in the film, or is there something more that was challenging to kind of assemble?
I think in general, I mean, Guillermo's, he's so meticulous, and he does move the camera around that you know, the challenge is more the rhythm. And because the piece was so long, I think the movie just became this puzzle where we had everything really fine cut, and we had versions of scenes where we either, you know, had the in chopped off or the out, depending on how things kind of shifted in a modular way, where if we had this scene now before this scene, we need rhythmically and or story wise, we don't need the head of this, or if it goes back another way, we have to put back the head. So it was a constant shifting of sand. So once we got past the big heavy lifting and the work of building it, then the fun really kind of took off. Because you get to see, like, within a couple hours we could change the whole film structurally and you know, heal some sound effects and music, cross dissolves, and make things sound a bit better. But really we could play with the material so much that it led to a lot of experimentation, and Guillermo's very open to that. And we definitely would go walk around the longest path just to see what was on the other side of the mountain. And if we could find one thing to bring it back that moved the needle a hair, it would be worth it.
I love that description. That sounds like such a fantastic collaborative process.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to him last night, and we both were, you know, we just missed working. Like the movie was just so much fun. I mean, it had its moments, like everything, but yeah.
All right. Well, I think those are all the questions I have for you. Thank you so much for the time. Brilliant work. Love the film. So thank you very much.
Thank you for watching, and thank you for the chat.
Take care.
Ciao.
I have to say, I think the design of this movie, my God, I felt like I could have watched this movie on mute and been at complete rapt attention the entire time. I think it's visually one of the most stunning things I've seen all year.
Thank you.
Of course. I guess I kind of want to start with the size of this movie. I was impressed by the scope, despite, you know, a lot of it being a emotional story about someone realizing that they can't run from who they are. I guess from the get-go, in a general sense, what was it kind of like reading it on the page and thinking of the scale?
I mean, in terms of the scale, it's interesting that you bring that up, because one of the things Guillermo did was tell us to look at the movie and then don't look at the movie, the original movie.
Okay.
And I remember looking at the movie, watched it, you know, a couple of times, to be honest, and it wasn't the movie we were doing. And I did read the book, but the interesting thing about it was when I watched the movie, the carnival felt so small, and I was really, from the get-go, very concerned about what is the size of this carnival. And we actually kind of had two carnivals, sort of three carnivals in the whole course of the movie, and how do we best relay that? So we spent a lot of time just signifying and figuring out which elements we actually needed to build to focus on. The fun house was very much Guillermo's you know, thing, with all its sculpted pieces. So that kind of was one of his, like, I really need to do this funhouse thing, and it's got to have all these things. And then there was the Spider Woman, who would, you know, I think during the final edit was sort of in and out, and I'm so glad it made it into the final cut, because that was from Guillermo's childhood, and he described being in a carnival when he was a kid and seeing the Spider Woman, and we researched it, and there's this whole rig that they used to do with mirrors and this slanted thing, and the you know, and it you know, it really formed him as a kid. Like, it was really something. So that sat with me a lot, and then the other, you know, there was obvious things like Electra's tent and Xena's tent and Xena's world under the stage, which was a separate set that we knew we had to have. And the Geek Pit, of course, was kind of the centerpiece in its entirety, with the pickled punks and Enoch and the whole pit. And, you know, when I first started designing, I was designing the pit where you'd go up to the pit, and then Guillermo was like, no, I really want him to be in the ground. So it was like this first off, this idea of the circle theme, which is throughout the movie, both in the Art Deco high society part of it and in the carnival. So, you know, the Geek Pit was always the circle from the get-go. And and then we dug it into the ground. So size and scale, once we figured out the size and scale of the carnival, I think I then started working on the other aspects, the other film that is the film as a whole, which is the whole Art Deco part of it. And that kind of informed me how big or small things should be. Like Lilith's office, which was one of my favorite sets, and, you know, was really a work of art. You know, I was trying to make it really a work of art. And, you know, we had that, I had that much smaller to start with, much more intimate. And then as Guillermo and I were discussing with Dan Laustsen, the DP, you know, moving through the space and how many days we were in there, how much time and how much of Lilith's characters in there, we continually expanded the set until it became way bigger than it would have been in real life. But we were able to do so much more in terms of choreographing the movement of the camera and the movement of the actors through the space.
Okay. Since you just brought up Lilith's office, there's a lot that I love about that. I like how sleek it is. I love how quiet, like, the doors slide around. I love the raised ceiling. I love the color. I actually like how big it is, because there are some shots where we see Cate, like, you know, far away. And then we're, like, really close with where Bradley is. And I feel like you could probably read into a lot of, you know, distance between each other in that space. And I
very much so. Yeah.
And I love
the dance between those two characters.
Oh, really. Yeah. And when they get on that, like, that couch, which I don't think I've ever seen a couch like that before.
We built it.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Like, what, I guess just dive a little bit more into her office, just because it's.
You're breaking up.
Hello? Is that better?
Yeah, you broke up there. You were talking about the couch.
Oh yeah, I just I guess talk to me a little bit more about The Office, just because I felt very lulled and hypnotized by that space.
Yes, and that was really, really the intention. The intention was to make a powerful statement office for this powerful female character who really, the movie is so much about her, even though she only appears in the second half, but it's all about it's all about control and manipulation, and the the con out conning the con, was just essentially what Lilith becomes, and past histories, and how people are blemished and damaged by their pasts, and the power struggle between men and women, and just between people, not to be just generally sexist, but it is a bit of both. It's a struggle between two people who want to achieve the same goals. It's a struggle between a man and a woman. There, of course, is the sexual tension there. So all of that, in this weird way, I was trying to imbue all those themes and thoughts into the set. So the seductive use of the wood, and very much feminizing it we added the curves, which was a request of Guillermo's to add curved arches in it. And then all the little tricks in it, like there were secret, or, there's a little secret door to her bathroom, and a secret door to her safe, and the little secret sliding doors, which was all incredibly intricate and difficult to build, to open the cupboards where her tape recorder is, and the buttons under her desk, and all of that stuff. It was a careful, choreography of moving parts in many ways, almost more complex than some of the sci-fi sets I've built with all the sliding doors. I mean, the same kind of principles of design, but in a period setting, which is extra challenging.
Yeah, I do feel like she could probably touch any portion of the wall when you don't know what the wall is going to do. I thought I felt like, even in a weird sense, like I would be intellectually unmatched the minute that I would step into that office, almost like stepping into like a gladiator ring to a certain extent. Like, it was sort of,
that's a cool analogy.
Yeah, like she knows the rules you don't, and you're like sort of,
and it's full of tricks, just the way he's full of tricks with the carnival trickery of it. She's got her own tricks. So so very much an interesting analogy there.
Jumping back to the carnival, one of my favorite things about the movie is when we get to see the carnival in the daytime. I loved the sort of dichotomy of seeing it how we're supposed to see it, like at night with the lights and everything's like moving how it's supposed to, but then in the morning when everyone's just sort of like rolling out of bed and getting together or having breakfast, I liked how still it was. Did you have any sort of ideas of how you wanted it to look when like we're not supposed to be there?
Yeah, I mean, I did, like initially when we modeled up the carnival and rendered it, and did some illustrations from the 3D model that we had. And I was in the daytime trying to accentuate the fadedness and the tawdriness of the carnival, just this is people's regular lives. And without those lights and the bells and the whistles and the, people on the stages, it's just kind of a sad place. And I think also see
the paint chipping and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. And we spent a lot of time doing the aging, the painting on the banners and stuff. And also where we shot it, which is basically a field, like a parking lot at an agricultural fairground. We were out there. We had built the entire thing. There was no set extension, visual effects set extension. They did do a lot of work, but that wasn't one thing we did. And so the actual location and the wind blowing through and the movement that we got from being out there, I mean, that's part of the magic of the film, really, is not building, some films will, and I think actually the original Nightmare Alley did this. They built the carnival on a sound stage. And you just don't get that. You just don't get the light, and we had to work around where the sun was in the sky, and then all our practical night lighting was actually used when it goes into night. And that was all tested and camera tested quite extensively to get that effect. But I really being out there and being inside the geek tent, for example, and the winds lifting the tent, that was all real. Like that was the real wind and the wind whipped through this field on some days. And I think it just really it made the set really something else.
I feel like I like to use like the tarp moving. I felt like I wanted to go. Like I wanted to go to the carnival. I've never been like a carnival type of guy. Yeah. I wanted to like step into this world so badly. I guess one last space I want to ask you about before I let you go. You sort of mentioned it before. After the film flashes forward and Molly and Stan are in that hotel room, I'm a sucker for Art Deco. I used to live in Miami, Florida, where there was Art Deco.
Yeah, some great stuff there.
Yeah, there's some great stuff there. I like how the hotel room, like a lot of it was green. I feel like, signified a lot of greed, maybe a lot of jealousy. And it's also a very large space. What did you want to show with flashing forward like that?
Oh, the hotel room was really, we had started, there's actually a location we were going to shoot in, and then we decided it was just not big enough and we couldn't move any walls. So we started with this location that actually was that greeny blue that we just loved. I mean, it's a beautiful, exquisite period blue. It's interesting what you say about this idea of envy, because I think for Guillermo and I, it's more of an instinctual thing. Like it should feel green. We just wanted it to be green and no other colors in it, just a play of green. Like the sofas were green and we painted the furniture, we made the doors. And I think it's just a gut response to the feeling in there that, where they're kind of underwater almost was more what I was thinking. They're trapped in their own suffocating relationship, Molly and Stan at that point. And it's, and I guess the greed thing, like it's kind of intuitive, I suppose, but very interesting. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I am like, I'm so obsessed with the production design of this. I feel like I could talk to you for like hours about every single little detail. I just think it's so exquisite. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Joey. Enjoy. I'm glad you like it.
I think I want to start with the most obvious thing that I'm trying not to geek out over is the first time we see Cate Blanchett. I feel like she's born to play parts like this. I love the twist across her chest. I think I wrote in my notes when I was watching the movie, I was like, is Cate wearing a cape? What can you tell me about the first impression of seeing Lilith?
Well, I mean, when I saw Lilith for the first time on set, fully made up and in costume, it was next level. Obviously, I had a little geek moment myself. As a costume designer, Cate Blanchett is one of those actors that is on a bucket list, and so being able to dress her was an extraordinary highlight in my career. And what was really wonderful about her is that she's so approachable and so kind, and she understands costume, she understands cloth, she understands cut. And so it, coming from my background, we became fast friends.
Yeah, she's the type of person who knows like how to wear clothing. It changes her whole body and how she may hold herself, and probably informs her of her own character. So I can imagine that she would be on a bucket list for you, because
and in fact, during our fittings, that was part of the fitting was, we did a few versions of that first suit with the curved seam lines, and then she started to work her movements, and I wanted to make sure that when she sat down, that the jacket of the suit wasn't going to ride up or do anything really strange, and so that was again proof that Cate just understood cloth and movement, and she was embodying Lilith even in the fitting.
I feel like I could talk about Cate Blanchett for like hours, so I guess I'll have to stop for a second. I was curious what you can tell me about Molly's wardrobe. She wears a lot of red throughout the movie. And I was wondering what you can tell me about that choice, because every time that she was on screen, if she wasn't wearing red, I was like, where's the red? Where is it? I got to find out where it is.
There was a little bit of red, or ruby red, or bright red, or yeah, I think that was a conscious Guillermo request or thought with her. She was representing the truth and honor throughout the film, and so we had every kind of red embedded in her costume, from more gritty red to the bright city red, and in fact, the coat, for instance, the coat that she wore, the idea behind it was that Stan bought that coat for her, so it was super bright, not really her red, and again, everything from that time period was really he was manipulating her character in the choices. And so what we did is we had elements from the carnival that she took to the city, whereas Stan would have burnt everything that he ever owned. Back from the carnival, she retained key pieces, in essence, to keep her roots of the carnival.
I never thought about that. He would just like leave everything behind, and she, she's obviously a more emotional character, cares about where she comes from. So yeah, that makes total sense.
And there was a sense of comfort. There was a sense of comfort with that world that she had left. She made the decision to leave, and she was confident for a new beginning or a new life. But ultimately, she still had the need for continuity from her previous world.
Yeah. Right. In terms of like fabrics and I guess color choices, I was curious. I noticed it a lot on Bradley. Like, I feel like the first time we see him, he's wearing a lot of like browns and a lot of I think he's maybe wearing like a leather jacket. I think the first time we see him,
it's a plaid, a big wool plaid.
And then it moves when it flashes forward. I keep seeing him with that the little mustache and like the tuxedo, and I was curious about what you wanted to make sure that you conveyed from moving from one distinct world to another distinct world, and how there might be a connection. Well,
I mean, yes, you're touching on the fact that in early discussions with Guillermo, we wanted two distinct worlds. We had to provide this carnival world, and even though there were 2 years in between these two places, we had to create kind of a chasm between those two worlds. And so for the carnival world, the color palette was all sepia toned and nicotine stained, and the styling and was looking back. So really, I was looking at clothing that was from the early 30s through 35. And then even though there's 2 years difference, when we get to the city, everything is of the moment. So everything was slicker, where we had nicotine stained before. Everything was super crispy and ironed and shiny. And so with Bradley, it was also dealing with cut and fit and a little looser and on Bradley in the carnival, and then as he gained his confidence within that world, his clothing became a bit more fitted. And these are just little subtle things that we do. And then, of course, when we moved to the city, it was all about form for him and looking as dashing and as together as he could, but still with a bit of a just bought it today kind of thing.
Okay. How do you
Because
feel?
we all have things, we all have clothing that we own for like 3 years, 5 years. You know, we have our favorite sweater, whatever it is. But with Bradley, again, to speak to that, burning everything from the past, everything was bought in 1941. So that was kind of great to you know, create this whole new persona with the character.
And you can sort of see the difference between how he carries himself, like when he is on stage performing. He's, you know, you can see his face more. I mean, it's Bradley Cooper. It's one of the most handsome men around. And then I kept thinking about the first couple scenes that he had when he first comes to the carnival. Like, he's sort of hiding his face and he looks down. So I feel like I was a little obsessed with thinking of the, you know, how his clothing would change his attitude and change his emotional state. And I kept thinking of when he gets money and becomes successful, how much more that would change his outward persona. So I kept thinking of that throughout the movie too. I want to ask about Xena, because I feel like she has, I want all of her clothes, because I would do the dishes in all of her robes. And I like how there's a lot of similarity between her, maybe like what she would wear at home to like what she would wear on stage is obviously different, but she's such a fun character, and it's Toni Collete. So
yeah, Toni is amazing. Yeah. We had such a lovely time, and with the character of Xena, you know, she was the woman who ran the show, so to speak, as we know, and part of that, we don't see it in the film, but in her first scene, she's wearing pants, and so that was kind of she was driving a truck and wearing pants, and so there was a real kind of you know, not masculine. I don't want to say masculine, but a real person that took control. And then I think with her, we got a glimpse as to the quick changing, and I think we saw a little bit with Bradley, but in actual fact, all the characters that had performance outfits, I had put in quick change elements so that we could show that you know, that this was something that people pull out of the trunk, they throw on, they do their shtick, and then they toss it back into the trunk. And so in the case of Xena, her performance was just so old and tattered, and we went to great lengths to age out the fabrics even before we built the garments to have that age. And then once we finished the garments, we did it even further. And you know, it was a matter of making sure that each of the actors were comfortable with what we did in regards to that quick change. And I was happy that we saw a couple of, you know, we saw Xena change, and we saw Bradley, Stan character, take off his quick change shirt, which was great.
Yeah. Okay. I guess one last question before I let you go. I love speaking to costume designers. I feel like there is so much character in what these people put on their bodies. Like you can say like favorite sweater, favorite this, favorite that. An outfit can sort of change how you feel for your entire day. So I was curious if you could steal something from your own designs to put it in your closet, what would it be? And I want that purple scarf that he wears whenever I think he goes to see Ezra for the first time, or when he gets questioned.
We made that scarf, which is incredible.
Well, I mean, I want it.
You know, the greatest thing about that film really is that I would say easily 90% of the clothing was built, and so it was really exciting to, you know, procure the fabrics and then start working into what we could make out of them, because I started buying just beautiful fabrics. That was where it all started. This is beautiful coating. Would make a beautiful scarf. And so, as for a favorite piece, I would say some of those suits were pretty sweet, and some of those overcoats were great. I mean, just to mention, I had original 1939 government issued, never worn suits from the UK that I was lent by one of a very good friend who was a collector, and we were able to lift those patterns so that when we fit Bradley in those suits, he was like, "Oh, these arms are very are quite tight. And I'm like, yeah, no, they are, but why don't you try on a real suit? And he tried on this never worn suit. And he's like, wow, that's really tight. I'm like, yeah, so we've made it a little less tight, but it really informed him as well as in the character of what it felt like to wear a period garment, which I think really helped him realize the character as well.
Yeah, that's one of his. I think it's one of his best performances. So, okay.
Yeah, it was. What a range, right? Rags to riches to rags. It's just.
Yeah. That like last 5 minutes, I was like, holy shit! Like, wow. Like, oh. All right. I'm a big fan of your work. Thank you so much. I know you're.
Thank you.
To go. So have a good day. Stay safe.
All right, you too. Thanks so much. Take care.
Hi, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm really good. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too. So you're Ryan's cousin.
Yes, I am.
You know, it's so funny. I met him for in a party for Knives Out.
Oh, nice.
At the Chateau Marmont, and we took a picture together. And he went and he put his arm around my shoulder because we'd had a really great conversation. And I put my arm around him, but what I didn't realize was that Karina was right behind me, and so I bumped a wine glass and spilled wine all over her dress. And,
wow.
and he was really great about it. He looks at she was upset and with good reason, and he looks at me and he goes, she'll be fine. And all I could think about was that Ron Howard narration from Arrested Development. I was like, she was not fine. So anyway, so you worked with him on Brick, which was a neo-noir film, and now you're working on Nightmare Alley, which is also a noir film. So do you have like a thing for noir?
I mean, I love it, but weirdly, the thing is, you know, when Guillermo and I first talked, we were talking about what is this movie? Is it noir? Is it this? And I think noir is a very helpful term when it's done, but thankfully that's not how we were thinking about it in terms of approaching the music. And,
right.
and it was very much about responding to the characters. And that is sort of my favorite approach, right? And, you know, these performances, these kind of like mind-blowing performances by these amazing actors, getting to not think about references, but just to respond to emotionally what they're doing. This is what Guillermo brings to a movie, and he is the conductor, calling the shots and guiding the whole thing. But it's nice, super nice for me to just get to come in almost blindly and just respond to what it is inside of that world.
So let's back up for a second and talk about those initial conversations with Guillermo, because I know you just started working on this in October of this year, thanks to a scheduling conflict on another party's behalf. So is that a good amount of time for you to crank this out, or was it like?
It's like the quickest I've ever done it. And in a way, it's like, how is this even going to work? But it weirdly ended up being kind of amazing. So from the morning I met him, I watched the movie, met him the next morning, and within like 10 minutes, I was like, oh, this guy is amazing, right? And it sort of felt like we'd already been. I mean, we definitely like clicked onto the same plane. And I don't think it could have happened without that. But from that point on, he would come over to my studio every week, and I'd just show him what I was working on, and he would jump in, and it was just so collaborative. It was amazing. It was like at the beginning of the project, I was like, how is this possible? And at the end, it just felt like, wow, that was just meant to be.
You talked about character, you know, letting the characters drive your score or influence your score a little earlier. As I watched the film, before the sort of the sensory overload kind of kicked in with all those gorgeous visuals, you know, you have Bradley Cooper's character Stan sitting in the bus coming back from whatever he did before, which we're not going to spoil. And, you know, I noticed there's a piano theme that's playing over that scene. And as he gets off the bus, it, you know, becomes more pronounced. Do you carry that throughout the film in different ways? Is that kind of a theme for his character?
Yeah, well, so here's the thing. So I watched the movie the first time, totally dry, no music. And 5 minutes after it finished, after I like breathed and paused for a minute, I was really struck, because in Western narrative, usually it's about a character's arc. They start in one place, they become someone different. and I was fascinated because this is the movie about someone who essentially doesn't change. And that was my doorway into it. I just almost right after I watched it, I realized I feel like Stan's theme is a single repeating piano note, incessant, that doesn't change through the whole movie. And as he puts on masks, as he becomes this carny, as he goes to Buffalo, to the big city, we bring in all these other colors and textures, but this one repeating piano note is there. And then at the end of the movie, we strip everything away and we're back to that theme. And so the score actually does what I imagine his character would do. And the first note we hear is the exact same final note that we're left with.
It's bookend.
Yeah, and also continuing as like a straight line through the whole movie.
Fantastic. So what if piano is his primary thing, right? Then what other instrumentation are you using for someone like Cate Blanchett's character?
Right. So that's like, I was just talking about this because in a Guillermo movie like this, you get to respond to these performances. And Cate Blanchett, I was having breakfast with Guillermo and he said, her character is the reason I made this movie. And I went home that afternoon and started writing. And for her, she's this incredibly deep well, it feels like, right? And it's like this calm surface, but there's like a darkness underneath it. And so for her theme is on winds, and with these really like wide open string harmonies. So there's like this beauty and tension / ugliness underneath the surface. And I think for her, it's about it's kind of about exploring musically these two things happening simultaneously: this beauty and then this ominousness under the surface.
Conversely, you've got Rooney Mara's character Molly, who is, I would assume, the antithesis. I mean, obviously, thematically, she is antithesis of Cate Blanchett's character, but sonically, does she have different instrumentation, different theming? Obviously,
yeah. For Molly, Guillermo was like, "Don't give me a love theme, but it would break my heart," right? And so for her character, it's this very simple melody. But the thing that's interesting for me is, I feel like a lot of this movie is from Stan's perspective, and it's how he's seeing these women that come into his life, how he's seeing these father figures that come into his life, and the sort of what he's putting on them. And so even that theme for Molly rears its head in the room with Stan and Lilith when Stan begins transferring his affection to Lilith. And in a way, Molly's theme then, Stan sort of does musically what he does with Molly, where he steals it from her and applies it to another woman. And that's the thing about Stan, is he has all these chances to live a good life, and he won't. He just keeps on pushing.
Right. That's fascinating. I'm sitting here thinking about that. I'm like, I want to go back and rewatch the film now with almost like the picture off, just so I can hear these moments, the score maturing that way or transforming, like you said. Do you ever worry as a composer, like, oh my gosh, when I approach something like this, then my music's going to get buried because everything else is so great. Everything else, it works along with the finished product. But you know what I'm saying? It's just so, as I said, it's just like sensory overload with how, great everything looks, how great everything sounds. It's just, how do you make sure that your score stands out without necessarily drawing attention to itself, right? Because you don't want to overpower anything else.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing here's what I find about great filmmakers is they're guiding this train and welcoming contributions. But ultimately, we're serving Guillermo and he is serving the story. And that's what I think a great filmmaker does, and great collaborators do, is it's really our job to say, like, okay, this is not my time to write my opus. This is my time to try to help the director tell their story. And so at times that means we're not doing any music here, right? We're going to let the wind score this scene, or we're going to let the sound of this wine glass or this whiskey tumbler, that's going to score the scene. And that's what it, that collaboration is. You trust the director, and then you're like, okay, you got the keys to this vision overall. And I'm essentially here as a servant to your vision.
Guillermo would love that answer.
But honestly, right, I mean, just to clarify, like hopefully the movie going public would love that answer, because we're not going to see a movie to listen to music. We're going to see music to watch a story.
Absolutely. No, yeah, I was kidding. That's what the download is for. When it comes out on a soundtrack, you go
right. Yeah, you'll hear it later.
Yeah. What is your personal favorite piece, or maybe your most challenging piece, something that you overcame as you composed this work?
I really loved Lilith's theme, because it and this, to get a little bit nerdy for a second, the piano that anchors Lilith's theme actually has a hip hop groove in it. It's something that is commonly found in hip hop, in that it's like pushing and pulling, and there's a lurch to it. And it's surely you won't think hip hop when you listen to it, but for me, that lurch is like this unsettling thing that then we like bring all these beautiful strings on top of all these beautiful winds onto. But the underlying theme that's happening rhythmically is something that just is not quite on. And it's one of my favorite things in music, to take beauty and combine it with ugliness, or to take rhythm and then just mess it up. And I felt like, especially for Lilith, she's so refined and so powerful. It's great because you don't have to play the text. You get to like dive deep into the subtext, and just it feels like collaborating with an actress like Cate Blanchett through this like weird, long, impressionistic sense is really a joy.
That's fantastic. Well, I think those are all the questions I had for you. Thank you for the brilliant score, for the brilliant work. I can't wait to listen to it on its own as a separate piece when it comes out digitally.
Thanks so much. Thanks. So good talking to you. Thanks.
Good to talk to you too. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.